So I know a lot of people subscribe to my channel to see medication updates, and that's great. So I do make quite a bit of medication updates on this channel, but occasionally I will talk about other mental health related things like anxiety. And so in my last video, I was talking about how I feel like I'm finally making some progress with my therapist, kind of getting to the root of why I feel incompetent and like I'm not capable, like I'm not a fully functioning adult. Um, I feel like I don't know how else to explain it, but it's almost like I literally need an adult to be the adult around me, even though I'm the adult, right? I have an 8-year-old son. But I very much feel like I'm just going through the motions, pretending to be an adult, doing the best that I can, but never actually feeling like an adult, right? And so part of that feeling incompetent, in my last therapy session, we discussed how my disability, which is cerebral palsy, I also have inattentive ADHD and major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. So in my last session, we discussed how I get triggered whenever someone brings up the way that I walk because they're pointing out my disability, but like not necessarily like in a mocking way. Like it could be anyone just asking me if I'm okay because they see that I'm limping because I have cerebral palsy, or bringing it up in like a casual way because people are, I think, naturally curious, right? And I was talking to my therapist about how that's a trigger to me. Like, I always feel bad when somebody asks me about my disability. And then through some digging, we kind of um, came to the conclusion that part of why I feel incompetent or incapable is because I am disabled. And that is a core belief that I have about myself, that having this physical disability somehow makes me less capable or less competent. And so I was thinking about that. And I think that that in itself uh, really contributes to my social anxiety. The fact that I have a disability, a visible disability, that is cerebral palsy. I think that part of the reason why I'm so anxious around people was because ever since I was little, I felt like the first thing that people noticed about me was the way that I walked. And I would have kids constantly mocking the way that I walk and pretending to limp, or like the first thing that other kids seemed to notice about me was how I was walking funny or different. And so they would come up and ask me, like, what's wrong with your leg? Or why are you walking like that? Or I would always notice that they would kind of like stare at my leg whenever they saw me like walking into a room or when I walked by. And so I think that naturally through the years, that kind of really got programmed into me. The fact that my disability is very visible, and the fact that it seems to be the first thing that so many people notice about me, the way that I walk. And I think that really contributes to my social anxiety and to the anxiety that I feel being around people and being in new social situations. Um, Yes, I'm introverted to a certain extent. I think that also contributes to it. But more than that, I think that a lot of my social anxiety comes from this idea of me having a physical like defect, right? That I know that is very much visible and that people notice about me. And I just don't like to talk about it. I'm tired of having to explain it. I guess subconsciously I feel like me limping and having this disability makes me less than, makes me less competent. So I'm curious to know, those of you who are watching this and have social anxiety, or those of you who subscribe to my channel for the social anxiety content, I'm curious how often social anxiety stems from us having some sort of physical defect or flaw. You know, us thinking that we're flawed in one way or another. For example, for me, it's the way that I walk, because it's my cerebral palsy, it's my disability. For somebody else, it could be that they have acne, right? So they might not want to be around people because they have acne, or they might not want to be around people because they stutter. My dad is a stutterer, and that's also part of what got me into the field of speech language pathology, which is what I will be starting graduate school for in the fall. And I noticed that people who stutter also tend to kind of withdraw themselves, and social anxiety is also a part of it. Also really, really affects them because of their stutter. They feel like when they open their mouth, they may not be able to say what they want to say. And then people sometimes will obviously notice the stutter. And so that's very anxiety provoking for a lot of people. And so that'll cause them to kind of withdraw from social situations. So I'm curious to know, if you want to let me know down below in the comment section, if you suffer from social anxiety. Is there a part of yourself, physically or otherwise, that you believe to be flawed, or something that you're embarrassed of, or something that you feel like you're less than because you have that, whether it's a physical attribute, a stutter, the way that you walk, or anything really? I'm just curious to know how many people with social anxiety, how much of it really stems from um, us not feeling like we're good enough because we think that we're flawed. So if you want to share with me, that's like awesome. You don't have to. And then I invite you to kind of contemplate that, right? Does having this physical attribute really make me flawed, make me less of a person? Like my therapist was telling me, yeah, you walk differently, you limp, you have a disability, you have cerebral palsy. But does that make you less of a person? Does it make you less capable of doing your job as a tutor and as a future speech and language pathologist? And so she challenged me to kind of challenge my thoughts with logic and reason, right? So I don't have anything against positive affirmations. I tell my son to say positive affirmations in front of the mirror every morning, that he's capable, that he's great, that today's going to be a good day. But for someone like me who has had negative thinking patterns my entire life, stuff like that just doesn't sound realistic, and it just sounds like I'm just bullshitting myself, and like not believable. So what my therapist has told me to do instead is just challenge a negative thought, not necessarily with a positive one, but with a more accurate or factual thought, right? Like if I all of a sudden feel nervous going into one of my students' homes, and I start having the thought that I'm not competent or not capable, challenge that by saying, what evidence do I have that I'm not capable of teaching this child literacy? Because I've done it in the past, right? And and then also acknowledging that the negative thoughts that you have are just thoughts. They're not necessarily facts, and they're not, they don't have to be true. The majority of them are just thoughts that pass by, and we don't have to hold on to them and accept them as absolute truths, right? So, yeah, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here. Sorry about that. But that was just something that I kind of wanted to discuss, that I was curious about, like where social anxiety comes from, and does it stem from like a core belief that we may have about ourselves, because we believe that we're flawed in one way or another. Yeah, but that's it for now.